Everybody give a round of applause for the Elixir Outlaws.
So just for recording now, Jeff.
Yeah.
This is the show.
I'm still confused. Is this the show?
It's finally the show.
Okay.
Wait, we have to clap, right?
Oh yeah, we have we have editors,
It's gonna be so
and so they
loud.
make us clap 1, 2, 3. Oh, Keathley didn't correct clap. You just it's fine. When they edit it, you'll be off.
You can edit me out of the show like you've always wanted to do.
Your dream has come true.
So during Os's talk just a minute ago, I thought what this community really needs is a good acronym for our stack. So like LAMP got really popular, so I think we should be KELP. Kafka, Kubernetes, Lumen, and Postgres.
Oh,
Yeah,
Interesting.
where's the?
Wait, where's the
Where's the
E?
well, we're programmers, you can throw all those things away. Didn't you ever work in a database like years ago? Everything was all capital and there were no bugs.
But like you just
How many years ago?
I'm a man of a certain age.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the kelp stack. Got it.
Yeah. There's nothing else important, that's all.
That probably means that at some point there'll be a hostile fork of that stack, and it'll be like the algae stack. Or things. No, it's got to start with an R. It's got Rax has got to be involved. No, come back to me. Well, I'm gonna workshop this. I'll figure something more.
We're
what?
This is how it goes, we just sit quietly.
The problem is they normally edit out all of these moments where we look at each other and we're like, what are we gonna talk about?
I have no idea. What'd your kids have for breakfast this
That's
We don't
important.
ask you.
That's an important topic. So, so I don't know how many people actually listen to the show, and you don't. It can be not that many of you. It's fine.
You can just hum, don't raise your hands.
Oh yeah.
If you've never listened to the show, just hum.
Oh, that's most people.
That's really
You
loud.
guys are
That
all
was-
wise people.
That was unwise.
Yeah, well, they're probably smarter for it, though.
That was a real blow in the old ego. We have this. So as you can probably tell, our show is not super. I would say structured. We mostly just talk to each other, mostly because we're all friends. At one point, we did get some feedback that they're like, "Hey, can't you just like keep this like a type 20, one of those like, you know, like NPR almost kind of, you know, like a serial type show?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I don't want to exploit people," and so I didn't want to do a serial show. Anyway, so we kind of shuck and jive, and it's very loose. But one of the things that we talk about a lot, which we know our listeners are super into, because we got feedback about it on many podcast review sites, is that we talk about what our kids had for breakfast.
Yes, actually, they said the final word in the review was amazing.
Yeah, awesome. So I think that they're
We just
doing
gotta get the
something
people
like,
in there.
now I know some guy, random dude's kid had a turkey sandwich for breakfast. Which, first of all, who has a turkey sandwich for breakfast?
Monsters. Well, most children are monsters.
Yes, sorry. Anyway, so do you know what your kids have?
I have no idea what my kids said.
No, me
They
either.
don't talk to me, they don't like me.
But that's not true.
They don't, well, the ones that are still at home are teenagers.
Oh yeah, well that's perfect. Well, you know what your kids have for breakfast?
Yeah, eggs. Yeah.
So for that listener,
Not a turkey
just
sandwich,
so
so.
curious.
So,
Is there a thought?
no, I was gonna dovetail this into things that were about Elixir and also the conference. So I want to talk to you about your talk you gave
Oh yeah.
yesterday, and how it was just sort of a slightly worse version of Stuart's talk.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Listening to Stuart's talk this morning, I thought, that's what I said. But he does it so much better.
Well,
And he's got better hair, like everything about
that's
it is better.
100% true.
Because it's not red.
No, but I've been thinking about this a lot. We talked about this after, and I've been thinking about how much we as programmers immediately can start to jump into, I think, like very tactical thinking. And I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of how do we grow and mentor new developers? Like, how do we teach these kinds of skills? How do we teach the skills of like stepping back and really like analyzing the problem and looking at all the details and working out how to come up with multiple solutions to the problem? Like, because I know for me, I've tried to cultivate these skills a lot, and just being totally honest, like I'm not good at that. Like, I'm not great at being able to sit back and do that. I slip into tactical thinking pretty quickly, and I have to kind of catch myself and pull myself back out of that. So I've been thinking about that a lot. I wanted to pose to y'all, first of all, what you think about that as an idea, if you've had thoughts about that, if you've like struggled with that, or if it's something you've noticed about yourself. And then two, what are techniques you can use to engage in that kind of thinking? You talked a lot about this in your talk about, getting up and taking a bath or whatever, going for a walk, getting, disengaging. But are there other things like that?
You gave the talk.
Yeah, maybe I should talk about it. So one of the things that I said in my talk was timers. And so I'm the same way as you, and I get focused on something, and I can sit there for 8 hours, 12 hours, until my wife tells me that it's the next day, I need to take my kids to school. And not even realize it, especially I used to work in a room with no windows, and you really have no idea. Like, you go to work in the winter time, and it's dark, you come out and it's dark. And you're like, is it dinner time or is it tomorrow? I'm not sure.
Every 8 hours, they fill your cubicle with a nutrient-rich sludge. Just get back to the keyboard and keep going.
It's that world. Yeah.
Soil and green.
Oh my god.
So I set a lot of timers, like regularly set timers and alarms. And at one point, one of my first nerves projects actually was I hooked up a timer that knew like what time I should leave, and there was a light in my office, and it would turn off all the main lights at quarter till, and there was like a lamp that was sitting there, and by 6 p.m. it would be completely off, and I'd just be sitting in the dark. Unfortunately, that didn't really work. I still just continued to sit there.
Chris was asking about tactics that
That work, yeah. So alarms work really well for me. Things that make noise. So I'll set timers and alarms on my phone. And if it makes noise, it kind of breaks that concentration for a moment. So Pomodoro technique actually works really well for me. The amount of time that you spend in that focus mode is different for everybody. I do like 20 to 25 minutes.
Everybody in the room familiar with Pomodoro technique?
If you're not, hum. Okay.
I love this humming technique.
I learned that at Papers We Love this last year. It was pretty awesome. I can't remember who gave that talk, but
Sean, it's Papers We Love.
yes, it's a really fun conference, and if there's a local Papers We Love group, you should try it out sometime. It's great. You don't have to read the white paper; you just get to enjoy somebody else distilling it to you. Now I forgot what we were talking about. Pomodoro technique. Thanks. So Pomodoro is you set a timer for 20, 25 minutes, whatever. You focus on your work during that time. I usually keep a little notepad. If anybody tries to interrupt me, I just like point at the notepad and I have a note on it that says, write your name down and get back to you when this timer's done, and I put the timer right up above it. And as long as you get back to people, they really will start to respect that and leave you alone. After a while, they just start writing their name on the notebook and walking away. So after the timer goes off, it's like 20, 25 minutes, then you take a...
Wait, you work at home? And people drive to your house and write their names down on a piece of paper?
No, my kids.
Just kids.
Or like, if I'm out. Sometimes I actually work with other people too, so like prepare.
In your house?
No, well, yeah, no. But I go to them.
Okay.
And I'll do the same thing. It's really easy if you're in Slack because you just ignore them. And then 25 minutes later, you go read, the 12 pages worth of Slack that 90% of it is like, what are you guys going to have for lunch since you're in the office? Turkey sandwich. Yeah, turkey sandwich. That was for breakfast. So you take a 5-minute break, and then you go back and do it again. During that 5-minute break, you might check your email, or you may write some stuff down for later to do and say, I'm going to check my email later because I have 900 little unread red little circle on my phone.
Notifications,
yeah,
is what they're called.
Yeah, I have like 900 of those, so I'll do a little Pomodoro on that. After you do like 3 or 4 of them, then you take a long break, 15 minutes, half hour, whatever. I don't do them all day, every day. I just do them in spurts, especially if I'm having a hard time concentrating. So that works really well for me. And breaking things down into tiny pieces, and then do one at a time. that also helps me get and walk away, because I'll do one and then get it.
So that last part's interesting, the breaking things down into small pieces, because I find that there's a point, what's the right way to say this? I feel like for me, when I start to do that, it often devolves into pattern matching against problems that I've solved previously. And like, it's a common way to think about the problem, right? You just keep breaking the problem down until it's a smaller and smaller thing. And there's value in that. I think, I'm not trying to say like you shouldn't do that, but I do think there's, for me personally, I've often struggled with, again, slipping back into almost tactics. Like this is the problem I had when I was doing TED, which I've kind of, for me personally, given up on. Is that, because I don't think it works for me. But one of the problems I have now with it is, like, it feels viscerally good to solve like one small thing before I move on to the next thing. And then I think this, like, there's the platonic ideal, like the goal of like TPD, let's say, is that you do this like nice design thing by writing tests and using your APIs, and then you know implement it and make it pass, and you move on or whatever, and then you've got good design, right? But I've found that like those little small wins feel really good. They feel like solving a puzzle. And I think as programmers, like, we often really like solving puzzles. It's like why people like type systems. It's like, it's a puzzle that you can just barely work your way out of. And then your code probably works when you get to the end. So I think that there's like, for me, I've always had, I've started to notice that in myself. Like I latch onto those like visceral parts of it where it's like, I solved it, I wrote code. And I try to step back and like, figure out when I've gone too far down to like the small problem thing.
Doesn't that depend on where you are in the cycle of trying to solve a problem, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like, to Amos's point, like that, and to what, Stu was talking about, like thinking about it, like you were talking about, right? Stu was just talking about a little bit more, that was something interesting. But,
You did better than I did.
they were both lovely. But to what people have been talking about, right? Like there's a point in time where you are trying to actually just need to step away and allow your brain to think about the problem, right? And then once you have kind of thought about how you want to approach the problem, right, then depending on where you are in that problem-solving phase, right, eventually you get to a point where you're like, wait, but there are multiple things I have to do, right? And figuring out which things to do when, breaking that down, I feel like, can be useful, right? And then you're getting to that point in your thinking where actually you're switching the kind of thinking that you're doing, and then it becomes more tactical. Right? So like, I agree with you catching yourself depending on where you are in that problem solving phase, right? If you're going into that too early, which is kind of what Stu was getting at, right, then it's not helpful. But I think it is a useful tool once you've done some of that larger picture thinking.
Well, and there's sort of levels to it as well. One of the examples we were talking about earlier in this conversation is we were talking about lexing, the idea of like lexing. And wait, I want to try this. If you know what lexing is, can you hum? Oh, cool. Wait,
If you don't know what lexing is, can you hum?
There, see. Okay, so lexing is the idea that Elixir is a program that can, it's often used in parsing as like a precept to parsers. And what it does is it breaks, in a very, very general sense, it breaks the different parts of, let's say, source code into different tokens, into little bits, so that the parser can then decide what to do. And when you're first learning about them, you've never learned about Elixir. You learn about them, and you learn the fundamentals of them, and you kind of like realize, oh, these are really cool, these are useful. And then like the second level is you learn how to use like an off-the-shelf Elixir, right? Like one of these like, like if you're using Erlang or Elixir, there's Leaks, and there's Lex, like Lex is a Elixir. And then there's like the step that you graduate to above that, which is you realize you don't need the off-the-shelf thing at all, because the thing that you actually need to do is straightforward enough that you could do it with a single line regex or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like there's these sort of levels that you graduate through as well, and all that has to do with what you can, like, this term, like, I think it's called like your adjacent possible, like the things that are next to you that like you've heard of, that you can reach back out to and like pull from. It's like if you don't even know that lexing is a thing, you're not going to be able to like think about how to solve that problem that way, right? One of the examples we talked about earlier is like, you could build a Sudoku solver, and you could like build the whole thing from whole cloth, but if you know that actually solving a Sudoku problem is like a constraint problem, and you understand what constraint problems are, then it's probably like 10 lines of prologue. You just say what you want to do, and it's done.
And then I learned that you just ask Prolog to do it for you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really easy. I learned Prolog the other day.
Yesterday, is that what you
Yeah,
learned?
yes, ma'am. It was pretty
Wait,
fantastic.
so where are you going with this, Stephen?
My intuition is that those things are somewhat linked. And the idea that taking the time to step back and look at the problem, like also allows you this time to realize that the Sudoku solver is a constraint solver, right? Like you just need the 10 lines of prologue. Or if you don't have a prologue, you can invent a prologue. Like, you know what I mean? Like you could, like that's a class of things that you can't understand. But like it takes the second to step back and like look at your problem and be like, oh, that's actually in the shape of this, which is this other thing that I am aware of. And I worry that like if you were to immediately take the Sudoku problem and then break it into small chunks and say, well, what's the first thing you hit a board? Like you'd actually just like miss that whole first step.
Well, it depends on where you are in your journey and like how much knowledge you have, right? Because if you're newer to whatever problem that you're solving, right? I would imagine, I'm curious, people think about this. I would think that like you also have, not that you shouldn't step back and think about it, but your maybe pool of resources and how to solve the problem is maybe not as deep, right? So you're like, maybe it makes sense for me to try and even, I have no idea, right? I don't necessarily have this depth of research to think about, oh wait, like adjacent possible might not fully exist in this context, right? And so I wonder, this is a question, right? Like I wonder if there is a point where like, when you're first getting started, like pieces of the tactical are helpful because they help ground you where you might get started, right? So again, I think it depends on where you are, right?
Right, well, and this gets back to the thing that I'm fairly interested in, which is like, partially selfishly, how do you cultivate this? Like, how do you figure out the things that you don't know? Like, because I want to do that. I want to continue to do that as I grow in this, because I enjoy this discipline, and I want to learn more about it. And then also, like, how do you provide this as like a mentorship? You know what I mean? Like, how do you give back these sorts of ideas and how to train this? And like, are there patterns for that? And there may not be. That's like standard programmer stuff is like reach for like a way to systematize a thing before really understanding what the problem is.
Yes.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe that's premature, but I'm interested in hearing other people's thoughts on that.
So I think it's hard to distill, like, there's so much to know in this career field and it changes all the time, that distilling down what you need to teach somebody is really difficult. So I find play to be really important. Even if you've been doing this a long time, find a problem and take the first way that you think you should solve it and just throw that out. Don't even do it. Do it completely differently. And you might throw that out and go back to the original. But in order to make sure, what is it called? I'm probably going to butcher this. Eilstone effect, which is where you reach
Yeah,
for...
you definitely butchered that.
Yeah, I don't know. That's it starts with an E and it ends in a stone. It's where you reach for ways to do things that feel familiar, even if they're not necessarily correct, just because out of habit. And actually, it happens with men more than
That's
women.
actually a thing, right?
Yeah.
It's called the fluency heuristic, right? Like the more, and this is a totally different topic, so I'm not going to get into it right now because it's off topic, but the more that the easier it is to understand something, the more weight you give to that thing, right? Like the more validity that can pass, essentially like psychological concept. That's right. If you're like with people in a group, and most of the people in the group share a certain opinion, right? And it's easy for you to understand that opinion will carry more weight than somebody in the group who maybe has a different opinion that you don't fully understand. As much as you know that opinion might be as valid.
Or more valid.
Or more valid.
Yeah. So that's why I think that play is really important. Is the same kind of reason, like even though that's a psychological group problem, you have that same thing in just your own mind and what's going on. So it forces you to take new looks at different things. That's also why in my talk I mentioned metaphors and picking up a random word and then trying to make that into a metaphor of what you're working on, is because it gives you a completely different way of looking at it. Now, if you just try to pull the metaphor out of your head instead of grabbing that random word, then you get less creativity and less learning.
I think that's interesting. I am curious to Chris's point, like, how do you kind of help cultivate that, like, way and feeling comfortable with that way of thinking? Because I think it's kind of what you're getting at, right? And how do you help other people who are at different stages of their career? I'm curious, I don't have an answer to that, right? And to, like, to Osa's talk, right? Like, how do you, especially when someone's like, I was talking to somebody about this the other, like, last night, like, we do a lot of work with Elixir Bridge, we're helping folks that are represented, like, learn Elixir, but if somebody's coming into the industry and they're trying to look for their first job, they may not say, they really need a job, they may not say, go learn Elixir, right? Because they need to get a job. But some of the patterns, to his point, are important, and some of the thinking, right? Even that paradigm of thinking, and how do you help kind of people learn that rather than a specific technology, right?
Well, I think for me, the only, my superpower is I've been able to cultivate and find people who are infinitely smarter than I am, and just hang around them long enough to do this, what is now coming on a 10-year, you could call it a career, but it's more like all the time performance art, where like I'm sort of pretending at all stages that I know anything about what I'm doing, and I think, but like, and that's the secret, right? Is like you can massively multiply your career development by just finding people who, like, finding a community to be with who are gonna like teach you stuff through osmosis, right? Who are gonna say words and they're gonna be like, well, rap is like Paxos, and you're like, what is a Paxos? Never heard of Paxos? And then you go read these papers and you're like, I still don't know what Paxos is. I read the paper and he talked about it a lot, but I don't get it. And then they're like, yeah, no one does.
Read Heidi's 100-page paper.
I know, yeah. I've started. I'm in there. Anyway, but I think that like that's I mean I'm fortunate in that here in Chattanooga, like I have an amazing community of people who do know infinitely more than I do, and I just hang around them and try to, much like a child who's in a wedding, like I'm just standing there mimicking the other people, pretending like just awkwardly being like, that's right, I'll just do that. Like you just parrot it, right? You just without really understanding why you're doing it, and then eventually it does. You learn it.
So some of those people are here. So I think we should just call them out friends of the show.
Friends of, oh yeah,
friends of the show.
So Lang, Neil, those are people I know.
From here.
That's it. That's all I know.
Wow.
I didn't know you respected that many people.
Knowles over there. Where is it? Where?
Knowles. Oh yeah, Knowles.
Like, there's a bunch of
There's so many people that we're not gonna be able to name them all. So just thank you for everybody who taught Chris things so he could teach them to me. I really appreciate that. So related to that, be the dumbest person in the room. That is the best place to be. It's super fantastic. It's frustrating to feel that way at first until you learn to embrace it. The only reason that anybody has a career that you would look up to is because they failed more than you have. Like that is super important. Just it's okay to fail. You learn from failure. So go put yourself out there and fail. And fail well. Fail forward. That's what I hear. I don't even know what that means, but just do it.
Sure, yes. I'm curious, I don't know if we're ready for this, but I'm curious, we've been talking about like our perspective on this. This has kind of been a thread throughout the conference. If folks have any questions or thoughts on this particular topic that they would like to share, we have a chair and a microphone. If anybody's brave enough to come up and share kind of their thoughts on how like you might cultivate this type of thinking, or share like how you might help other people learn how to learn, I guess is what we're talking about, right? Anybody brave enough to we're just gonna keep talking. So this is just gonna keep happening, and this is a 15-minute slot, so we're just gonna keep going. But if anybody,
or we'll be silent.
Yeah, or we'll just sit here and wait.
Yes. Hey, Anna. Two Annas on the show. 100% more Anna. I don't think we tested the levels on that mic.
Yeah,
so
we should test the levels on that mic.
We're about to.
It's on.
Yeah. Help. We can just give you a mic also.
You just have mine. I'll go sit down.
You are sitting there. Wait for it.
You want to just trade mics with Keathley for a second, and then we can test the levels?
Now you can just keep talking until you talk over.
Yeah, all right. Hi. Yeah, no, this is a topic that's been very much at the forefront of my life. I tend to love helping people learn how to code, and I'm actually helping my husband right now. And just some things that I've noticed along the way, like kind of progressing my career, things that I wish I knew that seemed to have helped him, was like having him understand you don't have to know all the little things. And not getting so consumed in syntax and things like that, but taking a step back and understanding there's concepts of things that I need to understand. And really focusing on that rather than, I can't remember how to do a reduce in this specific language. Like, no, but you need to understand, like, there is something called reduce, and you can do it in pretty much any language, stuff like that. So I found, like, and it's a hard thing to know to do when you're getting into programming, that it feels good to know those little things, to know, like, oh, I know how to do this very specific thing. But being able to understand, and it took a big weight off of him, is what he told me, like, not having to keep all of that in his head, but knowing, okay, there's something that does something like this, and I know I can go find it when I'm in this situation. So that's been something that I've noticed.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that goes a little bit back to like what Stu, one of the things that Stu was talking about today, right? Like understanding and knowing the details when you need to, right? And knowing that you can go find them and take the time to really understand them when you need to, right? You don't need to keep all of the things in your head at any given point in time. It's probably a useful thing to work.
Yeah, I really resonated with that, because I think if you've programmed with me recently, you'll know that, like, I will look up stuff a lot, because it's like, I don't need to keep that in my head. I keep that somewhere else on the internet. I know it exists. I don't need to know that fully like that. Or I keep it in other people. So I joke that Craig is one of my databases that I'll be like, you know how to do that, just remind me how this works again? Okay, yeah, and then I pull it out when I need it. And that's super powerful because it frees up more space in your brain to solve the problem you're solving without getting like bogged down into the details.
I have to look up the Phoenix and Ecto docs in literally every
I
time.
have a bookmark for that. Yeah, like I have like
Maybe
ecto
that's a
migration.
different problem,
Yeah.
but like, you know, yeah, I don't keep that stuff in my mind.
I'm curious a little bit also about another thread that kind of Dave touched on, I think Stu touched on, and I don't know if you touched on, I don't remember, but this concept of like being okay with failing, and how you kind of build an intuition. I'm curious if you have any thoughts, because you seem to talk about a lot. Feel free not to answer if you don't want to, but
Brian.
Brian,
Yeah.
sorry. I was looking at Brian.
Can you use my microphone, Brian? Sure.
Yeah, I'm curious what thoughts you might have, because you seem to deal with this quite a bit.
Oh. Yeah, so I think failure is the normal state of things. I think we sort of delude ourselves into believing that success is what the end result of what we do is. So most things are in some level of failure at any given time, and really this work is about how we manage failure, how we manage to intersect.
Even that small shift seems to like change how you think about it.
Yeah. So I think my approach there is I very much believe in the notion of like servant leadership. So when I screw up, I advertise it really hard. Like I screwed up in this way, here's how it happened, here's how like the process allowed this to happen. And I think that works really well because at this point in my career I usually sort of tie up in organizations and I'm implicitly saying, look, me who's up here can admit that I failed. And we as a group can talk about how that failure happened because it's a group failure in some sense. And so then it becomes okay to be like, yeah, I accidentally moved a database over here. And I found out that our backup still worked. So that's okay.
Yeah. And so, and you mentioned, and you were speaking that you've been mentoring more folks lately. And I think you've mentioned this with your modeling behavior, but are there any other things that you use to kind of get them comfortable with the concept that failure is just going to happen?
Yeah. So one thing we've started to do, the firm that I work for, is actually do a root cause process. And we sort of intentionally, as a group, sit down, go through the process, and there's no one person that's at fault at the end of it. It's everybody's fault, because there was a process that allows this thing to fail. So whenever anyone says it was human failure that caused a thing to happen, that is a failure of the actual process for figuring out what went wrong, because human failure just means that it is possible for a machine to drive itself into a state that it shouldn't be in, and a human being happens to be around it when it happens. So we go through root cause, and we, as a group, try and figure out how we are to blame. And one person gets to drive at a time, so you get to run the whole process of fireworks. And then we critique how the root cause process works. So we continually
To like iterate.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Are we switching? Yes.
Here I am coming back. Yeah, so if you look at code you wrote a year ago, and you say it's great, you're failing to move forward.
That's true.
So that's really the key, like, failure.
Has anyone literally ever done that?
I mean, the code I wrote a year ago is fantastic.
You guys seen that, like, it was going on a while ago on Twitter, maybe not, like that parrot meme? I wish I could bring it up. There's like this tiny little, like, wind-up parrot, and someone's like, you're looking at, like, it's looking at a piece of code, and it's like, who wrote this? This is crap. And they do get playing, and they're like, oh, it's my baby! And then they go over and, like, watch the little baby parrot. Anyway, unrelated.
It's not Steve.
I'm sure, it's really funny. Did you?
Yeah.
No,
Also, I can put whatever I want.
it doesn't sound like you have a problem or anything.
Well, it's also like iocane powder. I'm slowly building up tolerance. It's testing it all the time. You never know.
What? Oh, Steve,
Nothing.
this
You
is
started to talk. So Brian, you were talking about root cause analysis and human error. Have you read the book Behind Human Error?
Yeah, it's in my collection.
It's good.
This is
I
my go-to book.
don't have a whole lot more to say about that. I was just curious.
Everybody, Brian, have you read the Harry Potter series?
Yeah, that's a good one. I also highly recommend Charles Perrow's Normal Accidents, which is where I get the idea of system accidents from. The Challenger launch decision, the truth behind Chernobyl, voices from Chernobyl, beyond human failure, one other whose name I'm blanking about. I surely have written about these at some point, so if you were to like blog about traveling.us, they would all be there.
Awesome. I don't even have to write them down. I'm just going to listen to this later and then order all of them from Amazon. Put them in the show notes. That's his job.
Right. Does anybody else have thoughts on anything we're talking about they want to share or their perspective? Yeah, come on up. We'll trade out 2 people. Here, you can take my mic.
I think it would be awesome if we traded out all of us.
I know, right?
I do.
Okay, so on the topic of failure when coming into the community, I'm Sophia, by the way. I was around 8 or 9 years old whenever my dad, Brian, not the guy who was just on, the Brian Hunter, took me to an Erlang conference, and that was my first experience with that, and that's how I sort of got into like, oh yeah, I'm a programmer. And I went to the conference, I was like really short, and I was like, yeah, I get to type in a room full of people who are like 3 feet taller than me. So I started typing, we started going through the slides and everything, and I was typing, and then I was little, so I had like a little human brain. And so this guy, he's showing the slides and everything, and suddenly he moves on, and I'm not done, and I start freaking out. I'm like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And then he keeps moving on, and I just run out of the room and start crying. Because I'm a little child who doesn't know what's going on, and I feel like with that, and then my mom picked me up and I left. And then I look back on that now, and I'm like, wow, that would have been nice if somebody told me that half of the other tall dudes in the room were also behind. That would have been nice to know. But with that, it's like, it helps. We were talking the other day about how majorities can help the minorities, lift them up. And I feel like with this, is kind of like the people who are in the community can help the people who are new to it, like know that like you were talking about, failure is okay and it happens with everyone, especially since like I've been in that position before where I've been new. So I just wanted to embarrass myself on talk show. So yeah, that was fun.
The replacement. We found a replacement.
That's fine. That is totally fine with me. We'll reach out to your people, Brian. We'll get a schedule going. We'll start a transition plan.
My mom had to pick me up crying 2 weeks ago, so. You don't ever outgrow it, really.
Crying cookies, woo, yeah.
Jeff, by the way, I'm sort of piggybacking off the idea of failure, right? I've been thinking, it's come up a couple times this weekend, we've been talking about how to think and how to learn, and so I didn't start out in technology. I worked my way into it. I learned on the job. I taught myself a lot of stuff, and so the idea that, and I think Grace, you mentioned it, being comfortable with not being the most experienced person in the room, and being able to interface with people who are at a much higher level than you in terms of their experience level, the knowledge that they have in the domain that they're working in. And so, is anybody familiar with the series Dune, Frank Herbert?
Oh, I can't.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with
For those who are not, we just give it quick.
yeah, so it's this sort of space opera about this pseudo religious figure who knows how to manipulate his mind and body to become this pseudo-religious emperor of a space empire. It's a very good series, but there's a quote somewhere in the book about this central figure, Paul's. He learned very quickly because his earliest training was in housework, and that the first truth that he learned was that he could learn, and that it's shocking how many people do not believe that they can learn, and how many more people believe that it's difficult. And so, coming into a very, very different space than my formal education, which was in English, it was very intimidating to think that I was trying to do something that I was totally unequipped for. At school, I was terrible at math. I'm a left brain, right brain person, much more artistic, metaphor, things like that. And sort of where I started to feel like I was succeeding was when I stopped obsessing about the idea that this was going to be difficult, I wasn't going to succeed, that I could overcome that. And that's been very powerful for me. So.
Yeah.
Thanks. We have a hand up.
Oh, it's fine. I can speak up.
No, we gotta get you recorded.
So you say you got to. I mean, it's fine. I don't have much other than a question about.
That's okay.
Oh, you went on the stage, I think he has a question for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's all. You said you got over this idea that like something would have been too hard for you to learn. For people who believe that about themselves now, how did you get over it? And like, if nothing else, no other way than just like, I was gusto enough to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's one way to put it. So someone who has been a mentor for me, who, like, the way he put it to me, which was very powerful, was do something that is painful until it's not painful anymore. And so that's been my, one of my personal mottos ever since is, if I find that I am uncomfortable doing it, it's probably worth trying again.
If you're willing to take advice from a 13-year-old too,
might be the smartest person on the panel.
Maybe you
so.
should. I've been to that before where like kind of relating it to another topic. I'm a big soccer person, football for people who aren't educated.
See, you are the smartest person on this panel.
Sorry.
No, this is awesome.
It's awesome. No, keep going.
You really do need your own show.
We just finished our soccer season, and in the spring we do basketball. And so I've been thinking about doing basketball, and I've never played it before. Never
Don't quit.
No, I do still play soccer, but basketball is another option. And I'm just nervous because embarrassment is something that it prevents failure because you're scared of failing. But I guess the thing is, if you don't do it, you never get the chance to fail, and you never know that, yeah, I don't want to do this ever again. Or you find something that you want to do. So I guess a big thing is just thinking about the long term. What's going to happen if you choose not to get over that, and then just make your decision from that. Yeah.
I think, oh sorry, go ahead.
You can go ahead.
Okay, I will.
Wait, no.
I think for me, well, I think a couple things. I think one, you never learn very well when you're under pressure. And we put an inordinate amount of pressure on ourselves to know things in this industry, and probably unfairly and unjustly. And I think that comes from the fact that a lot of what we do is considered this like knowledge work thing. Like it's got knowledge in the name. Like that's not fair. Like, and somehow that's like a judgment about you if you don't know enough stuff or you don't whatever. And so I don't know that I have good advice or anything, but just to say that like probably can do. Like, and there may be a bunch of other external factors that are weighing on you probably a little bit unfairly. And don't hold, this goes for everybody, like don't hold yourself to the standard of someone else, and hold yourself to the standard of you. And like let that stand. And like do the things you can do today and learn a little bit and then just enjoy the process, because I think this career can be really rewarding if you push through some of those initial hurdles.
Yeah, I want to follow up on what Keathley was saying. You're doing a lot of work with Elixir Bridge for that Rails Bridge and helping folks coming into the industry that are new. I've heard this from them after teaching these workshops. Finding and reminding yourself of all of the things that you have already learned, right? You learn a couple things, they seem easy, but you've already learned those things, right? And they were hard at some point. And actually, if something is really difficult at that moment, right, it's okay to step back and maybe work on something else you're more comfortable with, right? And there is, I forget the term behind it, there's actually a psychological concept there to help build that confidence back, to go back and then be more ready to do the thing that was difficult. But also remembering the smaller wins, right? Piece by piece that you actually are growing. It might not be happening as quickly. But when you get really frustrated, being but wait, maybe I'm coming back to this problem for the second or third time, but actually I understand it better than I did the first time, right? So there is progress, and it's just recognizing where that progress is happening. If folks have said it's been helpful.
I was going to say, the other thing is, I personally have started to feel like the idea of talent is largely a myth, and it's just people have very different learning styles, and some people learn in a particular way easier than other people do. And I used to work in education, and I think one of the things that the education system, particularly when I was in school, coming up, that has been failing most people for a long time is that they have been treating the process of teaching like there is one way to do it, and that doesn't work for everybody. And that your talk, you mentioned something that at least I took it to mean: learn how you think and learn how you process, because your process is going to be different than my process and other people's processes. And if you can give yourself that kind of introspective training, then you're going to be better equipped to handle a situation that would have seemed really difficult or even insurmountable before, but once you figure out how your brain needs to approach it, it's just as much as somebody else's who would have come about it naturally, right? Air quotes.
So hey, I'm Nathan. I kind of want to just bring up something related to so you have to. I'm wondering if there's things that you can be deliberate about learning. So for an example, I learned to play guitar when I was 14 or something, and I remember one of the things that was really hard was I've got these two hands, and this hand has to be doing something, and this hand has to be doing something, and And like, I can't get them both going at the same time. And then when I finally get to the point where I'm strumming and I try to sing something, like my hands forget what they're doing. Right? So you have to work up to the point where the hands are moving almost automatically. That's all becomes subconscious. So that I can now focus on something higher level. Like, oh, now what chord am I going to do next? And then higher level of that. Like, how should I sing this note or whatever? Like, certain things have to become automatic, right? And when I'm programming, like Vim is something I've been using for a long time. I don't think about how do I get to the next line, how do I delete this, whatever. I'm thinking about the code. And kind of related to that, like, I feel like learning involves plugging things into structures that you understand. So my brother's a historian, and if he hears something about World War II or whatever, like, he's got all this structure, like, these people and these places, and he's plugging, like, in there. And for me, it's just this unconnected fact. For him, it's like, he's got so much context for it. So, I feel like there's things that you have to memorize, things that you have to make automatic. And what are those key pieces? How do you recognize those pieces, and then how do you force them into your mind and get them to become automatic to the point where there are some things you're like, yeah, I'll just look that up when I need it. But there's some things that's like, I need to know that Lexing is a thing. I need to know that, whatever. How do you recognize those and make them automatic? Sorry, that was a long question.
I think if it was created in like the 70s, you should know what it is.
For computer science.
For computer science, specifically. No, I think that's a totally accurate question, or a great question, and then I think that becomes really hard. I don't know that I personally have good answers. I have found that there's some really good resources for people who do try to take, this sort of like foundational computer science-y type knowledge and break it down to explain it. I think one resources out there is basically everything like Gary Bernhardt's ever worked on, and all of his stuff is really good. Yeah, like he has a great series on computation and on all these kinds of foundational things. Reading old books, you typically get them like very cheap off you sort of used something, wherever you buy your used books. And like those are great to read through. Old papers tend to be pretty approachable. I don't know. And that's, to me, it's like the shortcut, the superpower for that has been always to like surround myself with a bunch of people who probably know a little bit more than me, and just try to like learn all the words. So when I hear a problem, I'm like, I think I know what that is, and I can maybe go look at that. That sounds like a parsing problem. I think all problems sound like parsing problems, but like it or a graph problem, whatever, and then you can kind of ask people and ask your friends and say, does this sound like this? And when have you heard about this before? And I think so.
Can we get a round of applause for all of our guests? I think we're at time.
Thank you everybody for joining us. I feel like we have
You're
a
an honorary as well.
friend of the shows. Yeah, you stay up here. You're with us now.
Elixir Outlaws,
I'm with the band. I'm with the band. Yeah, thank you everybody. Thank you for a fantastic conference, Bruce, Maggie. I know that your soccer team's not as good as Kansas City.
Football
but
team.
it's close.
He's translating.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
Thanks.
Thanks,
See you.
Bye, everybody.
everybody.
One more time with the Elixir Outlaws.
Yeah, so we have our last 25-minute break of the day, and then we're coming back for the closing talk. So take 25.